tons of modules enabled, but you can see I've got AP accounting and AR accounting. So I do have both modules enabled on my system. Once I know they're enabled, one of the first parts of setup that we would normally do together is to go to this Tools Options area in the Accounting tab, and you can see that when we're talking about what are we going to send, are we going to send a vendor name or a vendor code? Two different things. Some people have a very specific list of codes they want to use. So we might actually maybe pick one little vendor in our list of transactions to export, one memo basically, to see whatever the vendor is, to see what it shows up in your system, and we'll be able to figure out are your names in QuickBooks closer than codes are or vice versa. And you'll be able to see kind of some tests that I'll do here in a moment. When you're in the Tools Options area setting up the accounting, and this is the part that we do want to help you with, we do want to go in and say if say your accountant is the one doing these steps, if they're going to be the one in Anthology to export those IIF files, those transactional files, we'll want to go in and say from their perspective, their workstation, where do they want to export those files to by default? You can put it wherever you want. Some people go right into the Intuit QuickBooks directory. Some people go to My Documents, whatever's easiest. I just have mine set to go to a temp folder. And then there's some specific account names, and these are very important. Things like if I had a space, it's hard to see, but I have a space before the word freight in, but I don't have a space before the colon and the cogs. These names are very important. That's why we want to do that initial test with you. So I'll email anybody who wants this document if you don't already have it, but there's a spot in the document where we do talk about, it's very important that the company name be set up a particular way. It's important that we get the exact same account names because we'll use those in structuring that IIF file. So take a look at this when you get a chance, but like I said, we'll want to kind of do this appointment with you just to make sure we've got it all straightened out. The really big one is going to be things like the name of your freight in account and probably your payables or inventory. You can use whatever name you want in QuickBooks. We just need to make sure that in Anthology we're using the same name. And most of the stuff is pre-filled, easy enough to fine-tune it, but once we've got this part filled in and that change saved, then it comes into, are we going to do accounts payable or accounts receivable? Just to jump to the short, quick one first. Accounts payable accounts receivable, that's the easy one. Accounts receivable is where you've done a house charge, whether you've done it in the cash register as maybe a special tender. Let me just bring up an item here. Let's finish my line item, and we'll pick on one of my typical test customers. So Larry and Mary here, they're buying this item, but maybe they're buying a bunch of them. They're good customers. I trust them. I know they're going to come back in and pay me. I want to get the inventory out the door for them quickly. So I could go in and I could actually ring up a cash register sale. That's one method. And I could say that I'm going to use it as a house charge or account sale. I think in mine I have actually called it an account sale. We're not going to track in Anthology their running total, how much they owe you. I will be able to get a report showing me what transactions and what items they have bought on account sale, but not a running total. That's what your QuickBooks is for. And it does have a chance to warn me to say, hey, Larry doesn't have no terms. Do I want to continue? Yes, I could stop and set terms for him, like, I don't know, pay in 30 days, get 10%, that kind of thing. But for now, I'll just say, yeah, go ahead and continue. We don't need to have terms for him. So they're going to do $21.20 on an account sale to the cash register. And then this is my receipt coming up, but you can ignore that for now. I'll just cancel. I think I've got my system set to print 2 copies of a receipt when I do an account sale tender. And now that transaction's done. The other way to do accounts payable, or excuse me, accounts receivable, I keep getting them mixed, where you're going to do a house charge, there's also the customer order module. That's where maybe you're going to ring up a sale for some school. They are going to maybe give you a purchase order number. Very often schools have to go back to their board of directors or whoever to get approval. They give you a purchase order number. They'll often say, can you please put this number on our order, our paperwork. You can do that through the customer order module. Think of the customer order module basically as pretty much a purchase order for your customers. There's a lot of tools built into it. It is a little more complicated module. In fact, in that we designed it to handle cases where you ship some now, pay later, pay all up front now, ship some in bits and pieces. We've tried to handle all those possible situations, and there are other training sessions and videos we can do on this if you need more customer order stuff. But the short of it is if it's one or two quick, simple items, fine, do it through the cash register. You can even choose to print it as an invoice, a nice 8.5 by 11 as an account sale through the cash register. But if it's a little more complicated, like you're going to have to go back to the school and remind them that they need to pay or give them yet another invoice, the customer order module is a good place to do that in because it just gives you many more tools. Like I can go back in after the fact and see that, oh yes, I did ship Suzanne those titles on X date and she did pay for them on X date. And I can even reprint. But just as far as creating, what would create a account receivable type memo for your QuickBooks, that's where it would normally stem from, is through either the cash register or a customer order transaction. On the flip side is your receiving, where you're going to be getting in your accounts payable type designation. So let's just maybe pick on an open receiving memo. It looks like I had started to receive this guy. I actually electronic ordered it quite some time ago, but they told me it was going to be back ordered. Maybe now I finally have gotten everything in. I'll just say yes, receive all. One of my very last steps, and this is what links to the whole QuickBooks, is in the actions menu of my open receiving memo, I need to go put in my vendor invoice info. Now, if I have just my packing slip, that's fine. A lot of times you won't get that true invoice until maybe a day later, depending on what system you're working with. Ingram, sometimes you won't get it for a week if you're doing paper-based, but if you're doing their electronic system, you might get it that very same day. But whatever information you have for either the invoice or the packing list, we want to try to track this stuff because this is the detail that we want to come through with your QuickBooks exports. So I'll just pick some random dates here. The invoice date and due date, we really aren't going to do anything function-wise with these. These are just notes for your own information. And then I do want to put in what my total is. Excuse me. And to kind of talk a little bit about what this screen means, notice that in my Anthology receiving memo, kind of in the background, it came up with $122.91 as being the total cost, the expense due back to my vendor. Maybe they're charging me some extra shipping, maybe they're charging me tax. What we're wanting here in this particular field, the total invoice amount, we want to know what your vendor is telling you that entire shipment is worth. Maybe it turns out it was $135. But then I look down on their invoice and I see maybe they charged me $5 of shipping, maybe they charged me $1 worth of tax. You'll notice as I'm filling in these fields on the left that as soon as I'm moving out of them, we're recalculating over here to find out, well, what should their subtotal be? We want to break out shipping and tax. We figure those to be a cost of doing business. They're not necessarily a cost of these inventory items coming in. So we want to do that math to break it out. So now I've got a subtotal of 129 versus my 122. That's, that's what, $8 worth. That's enough to maybe give me pause to make me think, well, did a price change? Did I not put the right discount? Something's different. If it were 5 cents off, I would figure I don't have time to spend a half hour looking for 5 cents. But $8, that's enough to make me pause. So I'll save it and say, yes, I know it doesn't match. That's okay. That gives me that one last chance to go double check and go, what was wrong? Oh, well, it was this one. I got maybe 41% on it. If I catch it here and can fix it, great. If I don't, I can always come back in after the fact to fix these things, and this is probably the work that your bookkeeper might do more often. A lot of times I'll hear people have their staff does the receiving. All they worry about is getting stuff out of the box, marking on that paper list what did or did not come in, what price changes there might have been, if there were damages, and their job is to get stuff shelved right away. They may print the receiving memo and staple it to the packing list and then put it in a pile for the bookkeeper to deal with later. Later on, the bookkeeper can come in and verify, well, does the vendor's invoice information match what we think we should be paying? And that's part of the QuickBooks process. So by getting that last chance just before I finalize my receiving, if I have that chance to fill in my vendor invoice info. Maybe I realized, oops, I mistyped. It was really $4 of shipping. I can always modify that detail. In fact, let's just kind of mock this up so it's a little closer, something a little more comfort range. Let's say maybe it was 130. Whoa, not that much. That's a bit much. So now I'm only $4 off. Close enough for what's a concern right now. I'll let my bookkeeper really figure out the details. I just want to save and get my receiving done. So I'll say yes, save it. At this point, I've double-checked my prices. I've double-checked my discount. I'm good with it for now. I'm just going to say F12 post this guy. We want to get that receiving memo finished, and I could print it here if I wanted even, but I'll skip that for mine. So now that receiving memo has been posted, now is where the QuickBooks steps start. So under our Tools menu, this is probably what your accountant might be doing, is under Tools Accounting. There are a couple of different choices. If I was just getting started for the first time, I might do this Export Customers or Export Vendors. That would be a good one to start if you've got a brand new company file and you just want to use whatever you've got in Anthology. We will export new vendors as it comes across them, but if you've got a huge chunk to do it once, this would be a good tool. Let's maybe do the account receivable real quick. And you can see I haven't really done any of my exports for a while, but that means I've got some good history to work on. So there's the different types of memos or transactions that I might have done by way of either a cash register account sale, a customer order account sale, or actually even book fare. That's another one. So I can see, well, this was an outright invoice or I made a payment on something. Let's pick on Brenda here. I can maybe sort by last name or by code or by date, whatever it is that I want to kind of find the important ones for today. And then I can pick and choose which ones I want. Maybe I want to do the entire list. I'll do a shift left click on the first one so it turns dark blue, another shift left click on the last one so the whole range is blue, and then I could post these. That's what would begin the export. I could also do that typical Windows where I do a single control left click. Oop, my mirror says he lost audio, and anybody else can hear me?
I can hear you, Melissa.
Okay. And I keep muting myself here and there because I'm still coughing, so I don't know if Mirror.
I think we've got you fine.
Maybe this Mirror's phone or something. I'll just see if he can maybe recall in. I'll keep an eye on his message to see what he's looking for. But you can do that control single left click if you wanted to pick and choose what transactions. Let's maybe try, let's do the one we just did today for Larry Adams. I've tagged just that one transaction. Maybe you want to print that first round until you know you've got the whole process smooth, but I can just do an F12 post right from here. And do I really want to post it? Yes. Let's see, that is CR. I'm just going to jot down this number so I know it, 103195. And then I would say OK. And I can print if I want even at this point, but I'll skip that for now. So that's been posted. I can always come back in and try to find, wait a minute, I can't remember if I posted that guy or not. I had to step away. You can use that checkbox for show posted transactions to see what you've previously done, or just hide it to see just the outstandings. So that was just kind of getting ready to export my customer, my account invoice that I did for that one customer. I've exported it. And as I set up in my Tools Options area, I've got a folder where I've chosen to export those transactions to. Let me see if I remember where I put it. So there's the IIF file, or invoices IIF. That's kind of a traditional format for QuickBooks. I can look at this with Notepad. I often use that if I'm trying to troubleshoot for somebody to figure out, well, you know, what's going on. At this point, I would open my QuickBooks program, and if you're using probably something, I don't know, 2003 and later, you do have to dig in their menu a little bit. I believe you have to go to File, Import, External Files, and then IIF Files. You kind of have to bounce down a little bit. and then you would import this. If it's all successful, it would say import complete, and then you could go in and find your customer's invoice information. Maybe you go by the transaction number, maybe you go by the customer name, the dollar amount, whatever. That's the accounts receivable. That's probably the easiest one. Just to kind of flip back and let's go over the little chewier one, the one that's probably more typical, is the accounts payable. So back under tools, under accounting, I have my AP transactions. Same idea. Here's a list of all the things I've done recently. And then let's see if maybe I can find that one invoice that I finished just a little while ago. Let's see, what date did I do that on? I think it was this one that I was finishing. Actually, it was 130 if I remember. It was that one. So here's the one that I finished. That I kind of, as I was doing the receiving, I had a chance. There are times where maybe you don't want your clerks messing with that, adding in the vendor invoice information, or they don't have it. You just want them to finish that receiving memo, post it. I, as the bookkeeper, will come in later and deal with double-checking this stuff. This is what your bookkeeper might see. These are all pretty good examples. I have an invoice number. I have, at the very least, most of them have a due date, an invoice date, a dollar amount, and so forth. If I had done a receiving memo where I had not put in any vendor invoice information, I might see it here, but I would be missing those key details. And in fact, if I try to post them, or post from here, export, it would say not enough accounting information to finish. In fact, let me just do one just to have something to finish real quick. Muir, did that sound come back for you? Awesome. All right, let me go finish this PO real quick. We'll just receive him. Yeah, I probably should pick a better one. Let me find one that doesn't have some cancels on it. There we go. So I know that this one does not have any vendor invoice information entered in. Just at a glance, it still could easily check just by going to actions and vendor invoice info. But I would see if I had put an invoice information amount in. It's hard to see. I'll see if I can highlight it. Right below this shipping field is this invoice field, and that would show me a dollar amount if I had put in some invoice info. But let's just finish this one. See, this is going to be for $5, and it's PO 301. I'll just finish him without doing any. And it even, the way I have mine set, it even warns me to say, hey, you've not done the invoice information yet. Do you want to post it anyway? Yes, I just want my clerks to get this stuff out on the floor. I'll deal with the invoicing later. Now that we've got sort of a half-finished memo, I should have one that's showing up. And we even do show you the PO number. It is a little further over to the right. In fact, maybe even want to drag that over so you can see that a little more clearly. And there must have been something about that one I didn't finish, but well, we'll do another example later. The one we did do for the 130, so here's the one that we wanted to export. I could, like the customer's side, export a whole chunk of them at once, or I'll play it safe this first round, and I'll pick just the one that I want to export. That same idea of doing a shift control or control click, whatever you want to highlight. Now I'll say F12 post. Do I want to post them to accounting? Yes, and this is where it's going to actually export it. And you could print too if you want, but I'll skip that for now. So now it says it's done. Here too, I can say show posted transactions, and I can see everything that I've previously done. If maybe I'm looking through this list and I realized, wait a minute, there's not an invoice number, no due date, no dollar amount, and it tells me not enough info to actually post, then I can use this transaction number column to find that transaction. So this one was PO number 328, shipment number 1. Now that I know that, I can actually go and find that completed, possibly receiving memo and find out, well, what's going on? What did we miss? Let's just say we want 328, and I'm going to say I want to see everything. So there's my shipment record. There's my completed, and I think most people are already familiar with the terminology where the completeds are sort of the last known picture, the parent version, if you will, where the gray historical records are just a record of what happened that day. You could receive against the same order multiple times. After the fact, if I've already posted, things are already in the history, or on the shelf, and my accountant comes back and discovers, whoops, wait a minute, we didn't get quite the discount we thought, they can go in after the fact to that shipment record and fix vendor invoice information once they know what it really should be. Let's put some information there. And you can also, to a degree, fix your discount and prices. You can't change quantities because we want to have a good audit trail, but you can actually go into the actions. And this topic right here is a whole other video. We could do another training on a different day if people want, but just a real short one. I can go in and fix that vendor invoice information after the fact as the bookkeeper. I can go in and also fix the discount. Maybe I realized, whoops, and I did the wrong one. I actually want to edit that history first. I want to say, no, it wasn't. I had discounts all over the map. I'll just say, you know, they were all 42%. And I'll say even update all those line items. So now that I've fixed it, maybe I've fixed my vendor invoice information. If those items sold in between then, I might need to also recalculate. Like I said, that costing information, editing, that is sort of a different topic. We can hit that another time. Let me save that one, and I'll tell it to recalculate while I'm at it. So let's maybe see if we've got one more new one to export. I wanted to show you one little other behavior. So let's see. Forget which one that I just fixed. You can kind of see some of the detail here. Now, I do recommend that if you're going to do your export, whether you're doing customer accounts receivables or vendor accounts payables, I do try to do it in one continuous step. If I'm going to do this export here, I want to immediately, if I can, go right to my QuickBooks and do the import. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting disrupted and then not remembering that you hadn't maybe done the QuickBooks side. If you go to post one more, highlight him, it's actually going to say, hey, wait a minute, that file already exists. Are you sure you want to override it? So if you do both steps at the same time, the export and then the import, you should be safe from this. But if you see this, that's maybe a sign that maybe you didn't finish your last chunk of work. So maybe you want to pause and say, no, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I can go out to that folder where I've been saving them and go, oh, yeah, I must have gotten disrupted. I can see what time I even exported it. In fact, I can even get really fancy and rename it. The QuickBooks doesn't really care. But once I've exported, I want to turn around and do those imports. I'm not sure how best to show this to see if I can find a way to do an import. Let's just see if maybe Google has a quick link for a freebie import tool. There's tons of stuff out there. Import an IIF file. If anyone is going to be doing the QuickBooks, we did find a couple of details there. I think they call it their cloud or web or online version. Everybody's got their own name. Their cloud version does not currently support their original IIF formats. You do need to use their local install version. But depending on who you're working with, I've got stores who they have one accountant somewhere else, and that accountant does all those imports for them. They just email them those IIF files at the end of the day or the end of the week. Once you're in your QuickBooks program, and it would be nice if they actually showed us some screenshots. Maybe they do. Maybe this is the video we're looking for. Oh, and I need to have Flash. Well, I do have some screenshots I'll be able to do, but when you're in that QuickBooks program, I think it's under that Files menu, Import External, Import IIF Files, you'll get the chance to import those files. If there are any problems, it'll say something like problem found at line number 8. And knowing that little chunk of information, we usually can help out and take a look. I can look at this thing with notepad and find, well, okay, which was line number 8. And then once I know what line it's complaining on, then I can look at it and find, okay, maybe it didn't like the dollar amount, the date was weird formatted, the account name was totally different, whatever. But if you do imports and you're having problems, just try to maybe grab a snapshot of what that message is and what line number it says it's having a problem with. wish I had a QuickBooks version to actually show you the import process, but I don't at the moment. Ron, I think with you, do you have a sense from your QuickBooks program if your names, vendor names in Anthology fairly closely match your QuickBooks vendor names? Or is it maybe the
I don't actually know, because we're probably tomorrow or the next day going to run names from both and compare them, but my guess is that probably 70% are the same and the rest are going to be slightly different, and that's actually the tricky part of it, because finding the ones, getting them to be exactly the same will be a manual task.
What you might consider is, excuse me, if you already have the accounting links enabled, try doing the export vendors for AP, and then you can, let's just maybe call this Anthology vendor names or something, so I know the difference here, and then I can choose to export that to wherever I want. Let me just put it maybe into that temp folder, so that you could possibly, maybe even really want to be safe, create a test company in your QuickBooks folder, import those guys, see what they look like. I think you could even copy your vendor names over from one company file to another. You might Google that. But just to be able to do a quick test import of those vendor names to see what they look like. In fact, we can even open mine with Notepad. Not the prettiest file, but
I'm assuming that if we did that with a test company, say a copy of our QuickBooks file, what we would see is duplicates where they don't match.
Could be, yeah.
So like it would be HarperCollins, but maybe with a space.
Yeah. And there may be a way in QuickBooks to merge vendors or to at least move invoices over. So if maybe 75% of your vendors are probably okay, maybe just picking a few transactions to do, just a couple to start with, a few accounts payable transactions to export out, just making a note of what ones you're doing, then you can import them to QuickBooks. If that vendor name is spelled differently and it is going by name and not code, you would see those duplicate names, and then you could try the merging or whatever they call it in QuickBooks to merge it over to whatever name you want to match. And I believe you can even edit your QuickBooks name or even the Anthology name to make them the same, so that going forward they will all automatically know that that's a match and to assign the invoice to the proper vendor.
To change names in Anthology, we just go to the vendor page, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. If you go to Master Files, Vendors, just pick the vendor that you want to. Like this one, I printed. It's all PTR. I'm not even sure what that one is, but you can just modify it up in the header area.
Okay. And it's okay to do it in this page, not in the details page?
That's okay. The details, you can be on either tab. Just remember that the changes are done up here instead of in the grid itself.
Right. Okay.
And it's the same thing with vendors, whether it's a distributor or a publisher, customers too, even departments and sections. If you modify a name, we're still going to link to the items that were associated with that vendor. We're going to see that newer vendor name in, say, Master Files Inventory. You're not going to hurt anything by renaming.
Great.
Oh gosh, what else is there? Oh, I did want to show one other report. I had mentioned that we don't do a running total of somebody's balance they owe you, but there are a couple of aspects. Let's say we had done that account sale through maybe the customer order module to a school. I shipped them the items, or if they picked them up, they're going to maybe mail me a check in a week. And I just said, make the whole thing an account sale, finish it, ship it, posted, so everything has been removed out of my on-hands, but they still owe me some funds. When they do finally get me that check, I would go to my sales menu and do a pay in and say that maybe this is going to be, they gave me a check and it's going to be X dollars amount, and it is a payment on account. So let me find my Larry Adams person here. I'll use him for all my testing. I could say that this is for whatever other reason, but in this case we'll say it's for Larry. He's paying on his account. But there again, we're just making a note that he made a payment. We're not doing any kind of running totals. I'll just say yes, I want to post it. You do get a receipt for it. It does show up later on your Z-tape as a pay-in. You do have other ways to reprint that receipt if you need. But later on, if your accountant wants to find out, well, how much in charges did Larry do with us for the last month? If they need that information, I can go to Reports menu. And there's the Sales History Report, which can be used for lots of other things. But in this case, I want to find what are my AR sales that have happened. And I do like using the condensed form. It's just easier to see. And let me set mine way back. I'm sure I have some customers. And if I need to give my accountant maybe a monthly report, just something that they need for their books every so often, I could go in and say, you know what, I want this date range, I want AR sales summary, I also want a subtotal per customer, and maybe even fancier, I want a page per customer. So I can say do a page break and sort it by customer name, give me a total, and then I can get this nice screenshot listing showing me that this customer bought these items on these dates for these dollar amounts, all told within that date range. They did a retail amount of $430.70, and then I can see my other customers on separate pages as well. This would be a great one if you needed to email a slight reminder to your customer. You know, here's the transaction we have on file for you. We've, you know, have X total as payments from our QuickBooks, so you can show them that maybe there's an outstanding balance. And you do have some ability as well to look at the customer record. Let me go find Larry again here. And under the customer record, master files customers, under the INV detail, I can see all the different transactions just by checking these boxes at the bottom to see, well, what all has he done? And in this case, way at the bottom is my house charge I did earlier. And I can see the dollar amount as well, way over to the right. In fact, you may even want to change your column sequence a little bit so you see that retail amount a little further closer to the other info. That's probably the really quick and dirty. Like I said, I really wish I had a working copy of QuickBooks to show you. But I think for the most part, if you just go into the Google, do a quick little video if you're just not that familiar with it. But QuickBooks seems to be pretty good on their training tools as well to show you how to go in and import that file. If anybody has a working QuickBooks and they're okay with it, I could maybe do a remote login to see your screen and share it with everybody. Or I can just see about doing better pictures later on.
Not really at our side set up to do that.
Yeah, I asked Janie, our accountant. She's like, no, the bosses kind of have to approve me getting in, which makes sense.
Yeah.
I do believe we have some pictures.
The one website that you pulled up is actually pretty helpful.
Is it?
Yeah.
The support of QuickBooks is a good one too.
Yeah. And that I think that YouTube video is pretty good too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm probably just on an older browser on this machine. And this document kind of walks you through it. We talk about importing the various details you might need to know, what to do if you get an error message, and this is a good one. If you do get an error message, make a note of what that message is. In particular, if it says error on line whatever, that line tells us a whole lot, and don't try it again. Get a hold of us, let us know. If you have the file itself, maybe email that to us and what line number it complained about. We might be able to spot the issue right off the bat. I think. Yeah, my document was done many years ago before the QuickBooks changed the interface. So yeah, I don't think I have any screenshots of what their program looks like these days. But I'm happy to see if I can get some shots and add that to this document. I think that was probably the big highlights for the QuickBooks. So the real recap is make sure we've got that enabled in your system if you've bought the module. If you have and it's not enabled, just let us know. Anyone in support can help out. And then also the last part is making an appointment with us so that we can go in and help you make sure that your tools options is set right, that the path is correct, that you can do a test import and that works. And this is some of these settings we do need to be able to get into tools options, so it might be a quick 5 minutes, get everybody else out of Anthology, or we just see if we can make a date for a time right before the store is open. That's all the stuff I wanted to hit on.
That was
other
very
areas?
helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else QuickBooks related, I'm going to stop my